Hi there Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 97 of Ask Bossk's Bounty. I do apologise for last week that I didn't manage to get an episode out on Sunday like I usually would. I just had a mega busy weekend, and I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that contacted me on social media through Facebook and Instagram asking if I was okay, because obviously usually I would do that video on a Sunday. I did actually put a post on my community tab of YouTube which did kind of explain that I wasn't going to be doing a video on Sunday, but I don't think many of you get to see that. I think you really need to click the notification bell on your subscription to the channel just so that you get notified of any community posts and stuff like that. It's actually quite worth doing because sometimes I do post like links to new figures that have come out and things like that. So if you haven't subscribed, obviously subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell, and then yeah, you'll see whenever I do a community post. Also want to say a big thank you to Alex. He sent me a letter to my PO box, and I'm not going to read it all, but thank you so much for that, Alex. It really did cheer me up receiving this. And he just talks about his collection, and he even did a little printout of some of the figures that he has in his collection. And he gave me some video ideas as well. He requested some videos that he wanted me to make. So I do take all of this stuff seriously. I do like getting these letters, and yeah, that's what a PO box is all about. It's not just for receiving kind gifts. It's also, you know, to get letters and stuff. I think this sort of thing's awesome. So thank you so much for Alex. And I will definitely take your suggestions into consideration when I'm doing new series of videos. So as always, this is the weekly series where you guys ask me questions in the comment section below. So if you do have a question for next week's episode, be sure to leave it down below, and hopefully you'll be featured next week. Don't forget to drop a like down below on this video if you do happen to enjoy it. And with all that being said, let's get straight on to the first question. Nicholas Clark says, question for next week: do you think we'll eventually see a Stormtrooper on a Star Wars card back and a TIE Fighter pilot on an Empire Strikes Back card back in the vintage collection? And do you think Hasbro will release more Black Series on vintage style card backs? I could not resist the 50th anniversary Lucasfilm Jawa, Greedo and Obi-Wan Kenobi. They still give me nostalgia feels like the TVC does. Yeah, I did like the way they did those. I think there's only a limited amount of figures that they could probably get away with doing that for, like repainting a modern figure in like vintage colours. You know, maybe when they finally get round to doing a Hammerhead, for example, like a modern version, maybe they could repaint that with his blue sort of spandex thing on. But to answer your question about the TIE Fighter pilot and the Stormtrooper on their actual debut cards, this is something that I'm covering in a series I'm doing called Finish the 96. And episode 3 just dropped the other day, and in that video I talk about the TIE Fighter and the Empire Strikes Back cards. So check that video out. I'm not going to answer it on this one, and keep watching that series because eventually we will get to the Stormtrooper as well. But yeah, TIE Fighter on ESB card is all about it's in that video, so check that out. I'll leave a card up here on the top, maybe up there somewhere, I think it drops, and I'll leave a link in the description below to that video. Christopher Barton says, great episode as always. Question for next week: with the recent announcement of the Knights of the Old Republic game remake, do you think Hasbro will follow the hype and finally give us an updated Revan figure in the vintage collection? I think the fact that they're remaking that game makes this figure a massive possibility. I think it is a big possibility anyway, because of course they did want to release this figure in the vintage collection until the fan backlash on the fact that the 30th anniversary one just isn't good enough anymore. So they kind of know that they do need to make a new one, and the fact that this game is being remade on the PlayStation 5 just reinforces that popularity, and I think they'd be silly not to make him. So I'm not going to say when it will be, I do not know, but I think it really does enhance the chances that we will see Revan in the vintage collection. Toy Archivist says, question for next week: do you think we'll see Lucasfilm 50th anniversary Black Series wave with the 2005 Revenge of the Sith card? I'd love to see that unique episode 3 packaging in 6-inch scale. Seems to me that producing a 212th Airborne Trooper, for example, would be a no-brainer for Hasbro, given that it's a popular clone design and the figure could essentially just be a repaint of the Purged Trooper. Yep, all those points are valid, and I've got one of them here. So this is the Revenge of the Sith line, an unopened one. I've had this one in my collection for a very long time. It's the Emperor's Royal Guard. Not a bad figure, of course, but they've massively improved him since. I have been a big fan of the Black Series when they've put them on the 40th anniversary Kenner cards. I did like those, and I have picked up one or two of the ones that they've been doing for the 50th anniversary of Lucasfilm. So this one actually came in the post just the other day. This is the brand new orange card from the Power of the Force. I do have a couple of the Clone Wars ones with the ARC Trooper and things like that. I think they're pretty cool. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, we've still got some time to go this year in the 50th anniversary. I think there's still more stuff to reveal. We've got probably another set of reveals maybe at the end of this month. And then, of course, we've got another one at PulseCon. And we don't really know what's coming, but anything's possible. And I think anything's possible from the 50th anniversary still. I think there's still time for them to reveal that kind of stuff. So, yeah, could we see something like this? I think the only thing that possibly goes against it is the amount of plastic that's involved. It's a huge bubble. But then again, it didn't really stop them for the Clone Wars figures. So who knows? But yeah, it's a great idea. PC says, hi BB, great video as always. Question for next week. Do you collect the Dark Horse comic packs with the two 3.75 inch figures? Some great and sadly now costly ones. I particularly like the Dirge figure. I don't really collect them as such. There's some that are more expensive than others. The one that I do have is very expensive on the secondary market, and this is the only one I have. I think I've shown it before, and I got this one purely because it's got the clone troopers from Kashyyyk, and I do have like a little mini army of those. But then saying that, I'm never really going to open this. So this guy here on the right hand side is exclusive to this pack. Extremely desirable figure. He goes for a lot of money even loose on his own, but that's the only one I have. And yeah, it's a nice pack. GeForce Racing 20 says, what do you think is worse for grading purposes, a defect in the bubble or on the card? Well, I'm not a massive expert on grading. You'd have to ask the action figure grader that one. But I think as they give them separate scores on a grading, so you get a score for the card, a score for the bubble, and a score for the figure, essentially what they do is they give the overall score depending on how bad one of those items is. So if you've got an absolutely crushed bubble but a beautiful card, it will still get quite a low score. So even if the card's like an 85 but the bubble's absolutely mangled, it will still get a low score. So I'm not 100% sure what would mark it down more, the bubble or the card. I would probably say the same, but me personally, I prefer it when it's got a nicer bubble than the card. I can handle sort of creases on the cards and things like that, but I like a nice clear bubble without any scratches or cracks or dents and things like that. Oviban Kenobi says, question for next week. Now that Hasbro introduced the long requested Army Builder pack, do you think they'll finally make the decision to bring Hasbro Pulse to the EU and other markets? I'm so happy for this format, but not being invited to the party is a huge disappointment. It's just like the situation with the sail barge 3 years ago. And I can completely empathise and sympathise with the situation with the barge, because us in the UK weren't able to get that either. From the initial way that you could back it through HasLab, we had to get it off eBay in the end. So I think it's something that's definitely on their mind. I've heard them talk about it before. They want to bring Hasbro Pulse to other markets, and I think the EU would probably be the next natural one for them. Of course, you've got the Far East market, Australia, things like that. So I think it's coming. I just think there's probably lots of laws and red tape that they have to get through to be able to do it, trading rules, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's on the cards. They've done it in the UK now, and I can see them doing it in the EU. Obviously, we just don't know when that is. Colin McClintic says, question for next week. I recently found an app on my phone that helps me record and organise my collection by name, rating, price paid, and value, etc. My question is to you, do you have any type of system for keeping track of your loose or carded collection? Well, one thing you should know about me, my friend, is that I'm possibly the most unorganised person going. I have every great intention of keeping a log of all of the things that I buy and logging them down in some kind of spreadsheet. I do have a spreadsheet, but I don't really keep it up to date, and it's pretty awful, really. But there is an app on iPhone and what have you called, I think it's the Toy Box, I think it is. And I use that specifically for vintage collection. You sort of tick the ones that you want and the ones that you need. It was much better previously because it actually did track pricing on eBay, and you could sort of work out the value of your overall collection or how much something might cost you in the future, things like that. But I think the API that links the app to eBay, I think eBay have closed that down now, and you can no longer get the pricing on it, which is a bit unfortunate. So it doesn't make the app as useful as it once was, but still check it out. It's called the Toy Box. But me personally, for the bulk of my collection, I use a standard Excel spreadsheet, which isn't kept up to date as often as it should. Adam T says, thanks for the great video, boss. Looking ahead to next year, do you think the new series of the Book of Boba Fett, Visions and or etc. will take precedence over the original trilogy and other Hasbro product releases? I think potentially yes, most definitely for the Black Series. I think they'll be very well prepared for all of the new shows. You'll get all the new figures. That's kind of how the Black Series works. Sometimes the vintage collection needs to catch up a little bit, but saying that, I still think that we're going to get some good stuff next year in time for the shows to come out. I think with The Mandalorian, they were caught cold almost. They didn't really know if it was going to be a success or not, and of course we know it was, and now they're ploughing as much stuff out for The Mandalorian as they can possibly do. And I think next year we'll see lots more Mandalorian, but hopefully we'll see more stuff from the new media. But I think, yeah, things like the OT and things like that will probably have to take a back seat. We'll still get a few of them, but nowhere near as many as we did, for example, for this year. Tony J says, great episode as always. Question for next week. What is your favourite alien species that has been brought back to Star Wars in The Mandalorian? Well, maybe your second favourite, because I'm guessing Trandoshans would be your favourite. I love the use of Garandan's species as a bounty hunter in Season 1. Yeah, absolutely. He was great. He had that little flute, didn't he, at the start? And then later on in another episode, he was like the sniper that was trying to take them out. Absolutely awesome. But I think for me, it was amazing in the very first episode to see these guys, the green Niktos. That scene with IG-11 was absolutely awesome, and I'm really looking forward to getting IG-11. I understand he's starting to turn up at targets and stuff in the US, which is amazing. So hopefully I won't have to wait too long for that figure. But I love the green Niktos. They look great, and we've got three really good ones here. We've got Woof, we've got Klaatu, and we have Jiran. And yeah, it'd be awesome if Hasbro sort of, you know, kit bash some of those together or something to make some just random green Niktos. But yeah, love those guys. Think they're brilliant. Kid Unknown 76 says, hey Bossk, early 90s UK breakbeat hardcore or techno, RNS Records, etc. It's got to be breakbeat for me. I used to love things like suburban bass records, things like that, Sound for the Underground, all that kind of cool stuff. Techno came a little bit later in 93 for me with people like Lenny D and Madness and things like that. Awesome DJs, but, you know, heavy music that. But yeah, definitely sort of 91, 92 breakbeat is where it's at. The Clone Collector says, nice episode, Tim. Question for next week. Do you think the Vintage Collection can get 300 figures, and if that happens, which character do you think can be VC 300? Well, I'm only just getting over VC 200, obviously being the Emperor. So yes, we're going to get to 300. I'm trying to work out if that could potentially be next year. I doubt it, because I don't think we're going to get like 70 odd figures next year in the line that have all got numbers. So it will be in 2023 that it reaches VC 300. And I think it will. I think they'll continue with the Vintage Collection. I think they'll be mad not to, essentially. It's highly collectible. It's massive now, basically, and there's no denying it. People love the Vintage Collection. It's dragging new collectors in all the time, and even some people are moving away from Black Series to the Vintage Collection as well. And that might be because of the Vintage Collection card backs and the nostalgia, but it could also be because the Black Series are seeing a lot of exclusives and a lot of repaints at the moment. And I think with the Black Series, as I've always said, you've kind of got to wait for that new media. You know, you got the Bad Batch straight away. The Black Series likes the new media. So the Vintage Collection seems to like, you know, the original trilogy, Rogue One, Mandalorian, things like that. So yeah, VC 300 is a possibility. I would say it's definitely going to happen, but I don't think, you know, looking at the numbers, I don't think it'll happen next year. Channel member Michael Page says, great vid as always. I have a character in mind that I think would do well with OT and younger fans alike. John Williams' Kajimi bartender cameo. I'd like to display him with the other cameo figures we've got. I think it'd sell like hotcakes with a Babu Frick pack-in. What do you think? I'm not saying that I wouldn't like the figure, because I definitely would, but I would stop short at saying that it would sell like hotcakes. I think at the moment those films are a bit of a no-no in terms of figures. I don't think really Hasbro wants to touch them with a barge pole right now. I think maybe in a few years, perhaps, then, you know, they could revisit some of those and we'd get some of the other figures. But yeah, background characters and cameos like John Williams, I'm always up for that sort of thing. But yeah, with the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, I think they're too much of a risk for Hasbro at the moment, to be honest. Tom Wood says, question for next week. With the Ewok movies reaching a new audience thanks to Disney Plus, do you think we'll ever see a Vintage Collection release of Sindel Tawani? I would say no to that. I think even though those films have been put on Disney Plus, they're not the greatest. I tried to watch one of them. I think it was Caravan of Courage, I think was the one that I tried to watch. And they really have not aged well at all. You know, I think the cartoons, you know, the Droids cartoons, we're getting figures from those, and the Ewoks cartoon, that's animation, so it ages well. But those two films, I think I remember liking them as a kid purely because they had Ewoks in them. But I think I think they haven't aged well. And I honestly couldn't see them making a figure of that, if I'm perfectly honest. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode of Ask Bossk Bounty. Thank you so much for watching. If you do have a question for next week's episode, be sure to leave it in the comment section below, and hopefully you'll be featured next week. I do apologise, I get so many questions, and it's hard to pick just a few of them to make this video the right length. We don't want it too long, we don't want it too short. So be sure to leave your questions down below. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to my Patreons and channel members. Your support is amazing, so thank you so much. Be sure to watch out for other content that's going to be coming on the channel this week, including episode 4 of Finish the 96. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we shall see you on the next one.